At this old car repair shop in North St. Louis, a drill's the tool you need.
Saw the price and I was like, okay, yeah, that's something I could do.
The building's owner, Tony Batali, giving us a look inside.
If I wasn't doing software, I'd probably be doing something with my hands.
His vision, a co-working space of sorts for people to fix cars.
Part of the dream is that we would have classes so that people could at least change their brake lights or their brake pads, just basic stuff.
He just bought the building back in March, glad it had a new roof.
You know, we knew it didn't have electric, it didn't have gas, it didn't have any water utilities.
But it wasn't until after he'd started making improvements that he got this, a giant bill from the city of St. Louis for nearly $100,000. When that letter, what was your reaction?
I was terrified. It would have been a ruinous amount of money.
Only then did Tony learn that before he bought it, you, the taxpayer, paid for that new roof. A litany of line items for repairs to this private property, none of which Tony nor the previous owner signed off on. The city did.
You've seen the city board up buildings and cut grass and weeds and clean up garbage and stuff like that, but a whole roof? I've never heard of that before, so it was confounding.
Confounding and frustrating given what was on that list. The bill says they repaired stairs.
Yeah,
there's no stairs.
Yeah, the stairs is a great one.
Plus $10,500 to replace floor joists and subfloor, except there isn't any.
The city blindly paid out for things that clearly don't exist.
$10,000 to board up the windows.
Barely screwed into the 2x4. Not
so secured with these twist ties. And $18,000 for tuck pointing that Tony questions.
You can see where they did little bits here and there, but it's all nonsensical.
And even the roof that was put on by the city contractor is not nailed down in places. When you look around here, do you see $100,000 worth of repairs?
Oh, absolutely not. No, there's no way.
The city is using ARPA money to stabilize these buildings.
About a year ago, First Alert 4 first told you about a program called Stable Communities STL. It set aside millions in ARPA pandemic funds to, quote, preserve, rehabilitate, demolish, and deconstruct privately owned properties.
I'm really curious where all this money's going.
But Tony and others now have serious questions. For example, Farst Construction LLC was reportedly paid the amount on Tony's invoice, but they don't have a website. Their company address is this unmarked home not far away from Tony's, and no one answered the door on 2 separate occasions. The previous business address is in Maryland Heights at this apartment. Who lives here? A Ms. Papula. She's the ex-wife of city building inspector Adebanjo Papula, one of just 2 city inspectors assigned solely to oversee the entire program.
Is there money being funneled into people's pockets? Whose palms are getting greased? I don't know.
This is the work they did. This is how they left it. This is support.
Jason Staten, too, walked us around.
Nothing's level. Nothing's even.
Questioning the quality of work performed by another city-hired contractor with the program. Being inside,
I remember as a kid,
brings him to tears.
Having a Christmas tree right here.
This is my home. This is my home. This is my family's home. And I tell them, you can't have it. There's plenty of other ones, but you can't have this one.
This home has been in Jason's family for 70 years. He moved his family out a decade ago after discovering asbestos, and he's been working on the funds to fix it up ever since.
If you ask my daughter, who's 5, what she wants for Christmas, she wants a house.
But now the city has slapped him with a $121,000 lien for the work done here, racking up interest and penalties. If he doesn't pay, he'll lose the house.
It's priceless, but to them, they'll put a number on it and they'll try to take it.
I think it's to the expense of their residents that this is happening.
Frustration, too, from Lakeisha Graham. She lives in Texas, but in 2022, she took ownership of this historic building in the 5200 block of Cates from a family member and had hopes to redevelop the lot after the city told her the building couldn't be rehabbed.
They were going to charge us $30,000 to demolish it, but then we found a contractor to demolish it for cheaper, and then we got blocked from demolishing it. They said that we couldn't.
On a recent visit, we saw workers there who said they were working for the city of St. Louis. But how the total gets to $220,000 on the invoice, Lakeisha has no idea.
Up until you called me yesterday, I didn't know that they had actually put a lien on.
Do you think that it's fair that they're putting liens on property owners like this?
No, and I think that's how they end up getting a lot of the property back in the city. I don't know the politically correct term for it, but I just noticed that they take over a lot of communities when they're trying to rebuild and bring up the value. They do underhanded things to take over individuals' property.
Do you think it's potentially unconstitutional?
Yes, I do.
Robert Durker, a former city judge and attorney in the city's law department, reviewed the liens that we pulled. He calls the program forced rehab. I'm just trying to think if there's anything quite like this where, a private contractor comes and in some cases busts down the door to get in and does this work, and then without you consenting to it, you have to pay for it.
I've never come across that, to be honest. As far as Missouri law goes, this is breaking new ground.
He says the city cites building codes, giving officials authority to remediate code violations. But he says the code is overly broad. What's more, the code says the building commissioner can enter into construction contracts with no other review, signature, or approval. Durker says the code may be out of sync with the city's charter and the Constitution, and it's only come up because of an influx in COVID cash. Should we be very comfortable in who we're selecting to perform the work and what work they're doing, and that it's quality work?
That's kind of basic good government to make sure you're getting your money's worth.
I can't talk to nobody.
We reached Adebanjo Papula by phone, but he would not say anything to us. We also wanted to talk to a city official about the program, but they refused to provide an interview. Instead, a spokesperson for the mayor sent a statement saying, quote, local and state law authorizes abatement as a legitimate police power to secure the health and safety of citizens. Further adding that of the 3,000 privately owned and condemned properties in the city, they are or have worked on 55 properties. They were selected by a committee assessing a variety of factors. Contractors were selected, the spokesperson says, through a competitive bid process. As for Papula, the spokesperson told us, quote, we just learned of this Wednesday. We take this very seriously, and we immediately opened an investigation. First Alert 4 Investigates pulled all the records of liens placed by the city this year for this program. Many, including Jason's and Lakeisha's, had been condemned by the city. They don't owe taxes, but some property owners on the list do. Most properties on the list are zoned residential. More than half appear to be owned by private individuals, not LLCs or corporations. Some familiar names, though. One property belongs to developer Paul McKee. Another affiliated with Sonny Sagar, a doctor currently under indictment. Also on the list, former Alderman Brandon Bosley, who's also facing federal charges. The city has already put out this money, and there's a good likelihood they may not get it back.
The probability is that the lien will never be recouped.
Cried as I watched them throw all my stuff out my house.
Jason says contractors took valuable items, too. Left with a new roof that leaks and gutters to nowhere. He says he's not giving up.
What they did to my house and my family isn't right.
As the city posts up placards proud of the work, he says he's just hoping for a miracle.
To wait for the light to shine on it. And I thank you all for now shining the light on the things they're trying to do in the darkness and the shadows.
Tony, too, says he just wants answers.
Who's auditing this? At least in the city, don't they want to know where this money is going? That seems like basic accountability.
Tony actually negotiated with the city, but the city still claims he owes them $25,000. In his case, though, they never filed a lien against the previous owner. At Jason's home, though, the city claims his property was chosen for a number of code violations dating back years. They claim he was notified about the construction. He said he had no idea the city was planning to do it. Meanwhile, we spoke with Papula's ex-wife. She repeatedly said she had absolutely nothing to do with the business, including no financial ties. The owner of Farce Construction did write us back an email saying Mr. Papula has no ties to the business. That owner says she simply used Ms. Papula's address. Now, earlier today, we also told you about possible connections between Adebanjo Papula and another construction company, Premier Finish. They've been contracted for hundreds of thousands of dollars for work for the city, but the landlord at their business address says the owner of that company, Tanya Garrett, and Papula are married, and the two do share a home in Wildwood, according to public records. As you can see here, there is just so much to this story, a lot more questions, and you can count on us to keep following the entire issue. I'm Lauren Traeger. First Alert 4 investigates.
Several area leaders now calling for criminal investigations and audits after First Alert 4 investigates revealed a St. Louis city inspector has ties to construction companies getting millions in public funds. Well, today we learned that St. Louis city inspector has resigned. Chief investigative reporter Lauren Traeger has been gathering reaction after her reporting over the last 2 days unveiled serious concerns with the program that's been fixing up private properties.
And not only are they calling for those deeper investigations, some area leaders tell us they think the flow of money needs to stop right now until more light can be shown on the program.
Honestly, I thought your report was shocking.
State Representative Steve Butt says what we uncovered was beyond shocking and inexcusable.
Would you support a pause on the program right now?
Oh, absolutely. I think I will call for a pause, and the citizens watching your interview should do the same. I mean, it just has to be. Can't go forward until you get to the bottom of, is there corruption or is it just incompetence? But we need to know. Either way, there should be a pause.
First Alert 4 Investigates has been telling you about a program that uses pandemic funds to fix up privately owned vacant properties in St. Louis and then bill the property's owners tens of thousands of dollars. If they don't pay up, they could lose their properties, something some owners told us is unfair.
This is my home. This is my home. This is my family's home. And I tell them, you can't have it. There's plenty of other ones, but you can't have this one.
When you look around here, do you see $100,000 worth of repairs?
Oh, absolutely not. No, there's no way.
Property owners told us the numbers didn't make sense always, and they questioned the quality of the work performed.
I did want to talk to you because it looks like you are affiliated with some of the contractors.
No, I can't talk to you about anything, please.
But we also learned that St. Louis City Inspector Adebanjo Papula has ties to two of the construction companies who have been paid for the work. One company, Premier Finish Contractors, is owned by Tanya Garrett. She and Papula, according to people we've talked to, are married and co-own this home in Wildwood.
Is there any reasonable scenario where he should have ties to any of these companies the city is hiring?
No, that doesn't pass the sniff test even a little bit.
Representative Butt says he will be contacting the state auditor and the St. Louis City prosecutor.
It's jaw-dropping. I mean, the lack of oversight is absolutely stunning.
St. Louis Alderwoman Kara Spencer, too, supports pausing the program and doing a total and complete review.
I mean, this is absolutely inexcusable. And I think it raises questions as to whether or not the feds are going to come back in here, first of all, and look at the legality of the administration of the program.
St. Louis City building codes do appear to authorize city officials to fix up code violations on private properties, but some legal experts have called that code overly broad and say the program is potentially unconstitutional. The city has said the program is legal, but a spokesperson says they cannot comment now as they are conducting their own internal investigation. As you heard, Papula has declined to comment. Tanya Garrett has not returned our attempts to get a hold of her.
New details tonight about a former St. Louis City building inspector under investigation for his connections to companies collecting your tax dollars. Chief investigative reporter Lauren Traeger has learned those connections are also tied to another pot of city money. Lauren has uncovered the link that could date back years.
We have been telling you about a program in which the city is going onto private property and making repairs to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars. They've been doing the same thing to properties owned by the public through St. Louis's land bank. And now we've learned that program is also under question.
What was going on? Were they totally asleep at the wheel? It just makes you pause and go, I'm sure there's more to come.
Jeffrey Boyd is a former St. Louis alderman released this year from federal prison after pleading guilty in a corruption case.
At the end of the day, I learned a lot from that experience, and it's just making me a better Jeffrey.
But now home, he says he's being targeted. The city informing him they'd be hiring a company to make $87,000 worth of repairs to a building he owns on Martin Luther King Drive. Things, he says, that made no sense.
If you look at the document, that I need to replace rotten or broken floor joists. It's a concrete floor. It's a concrete floor. The man never went in the building.
Last week, First Alert 4 Investigates first told you about 3 companies with ties to St. Louis City Inspector Adebanjo Papula. Those companies have been paid millions of dollars for a program using federal pandemic funds for work they reportedly did on privately owned property. Work the owners tell us they seriously question. Papula, who oversaw the program and inspected the work, resigned Friday, and the city says they are investigating. They told us Friday the program had been put on pause in October to assess operating procedures and scope of work.
Why? Why did you pause the program? Did you pause the program because you finally exposed that this building inspector wasn't doing what he's supposed to do, but yet he still have that position?
But now First Alert 4 Investigates has learned those very same companies have also done work on publicly owned buildings. It's through a voter-passed measure called Prop NS, which seeks to stabilize buildings owned by the LRA, the Land Revitalization Authority. We did an extensive search on those buildings. The city paying Papula-tied companies, Premier Finish contractors, Farst Construction, and Maxify contractors hundreds of thousands for the repairs, with the work dating as far back as 2021. In some cases, the buildings have been sold for a fraction of the repair price.
To hear that he's also the inspector for Prop NS and all the other special programs, it's like, who in their right mind would put one person in charge of so much with no checks and balances?
Boyd was the primary sponsor of Prop NS. He says the program itself is good for redevelopment, but much more, he says, needs to be revealed, including why no one caught the connections sooner.
Does someone need to be accountable to this program?
Absolutely, but it's bigger than Banjo, I promise you. It's bigger than him. This one person could not pull all of this off without somebody else on the inside knowing what's going on. I promise you that.
Till now, the city would only say they were conducting an internal investigation and that police were not involved. Well, now this letter from the St. Louis mayor, Tashara Jones, asking for the FBI to investigate one of her own departments may take things in a new direction.
Here we go again. I hate to say that, but you know, there's things that happen in the city that need investigation, and here we go again.
John Davis is a former federal prosecutor in St. Louis. He says what First Alert 4 Investigates has uncovered warrants an investigation.
I just thought it was unfortunate that it was an expenditure of public funds that, for all intents and purposes, looks like it's enriching someone improperly, potentially illegally. And that's a shame.
Last week, First Alert 4 Investigates told you about 3 companies with ties to St. Louis City Inspector Adebanjo Papula. We've obtained an accounting sheet from the city's comptroller showing just this year alone, Farst Construction, Maxify contractors, and Premier Finish contractors have been paid millions in public dollars for work they reportedly did to fix up private and public-owned buildings in programs meant to stabilize vacant properties. But some city property owners tell us they seriously question the work that was performed by those companies tied to Papula. And we've uncovered the dollar amounts may actually be much higher, as the connections could go back for years. Comptroller Darlene Green telling us late Tuesday she has suspended another $387,000 owed to one of the companies tied to Papula. She sent a letter of her own to St. Louis prosecutor Gabe Gore writing, quote, "The projects funded by both federal and local tax dollars show signs of fraud and abuse."
Without specific knowledge of this issue, obviously, what do you think federal investigators might be doing right now?
Probably a record search, bank records, phone records, tax records, things like that.
But if anyone else other than this city building inspector was involved, could they also be responsible?
Absolutely, especially in a federal system because they have that magic statute called conspiracy.
No, I can't talk to you.
Papula, who was heavily involved in the programs and inspected the jobs, resigned Friday. He has not spoken to us. City officials, too, have so far declined our requests for interviews. The mayor, in her letter to the FBI, writing, quote, "My office and administration will open any doors needed for your investigation to ensure that any wrongdoing is uncovered and violators are held accountable." Davis says someone should get to the bottom of it.
If there's an investigation and a prosecution, the jury will decide.
Missouri U.S. Senator Eric Schmidt now says it is very possible the city of St. Louis may have to give back federal pandemic money if fraud or abuse is discovered in how the city used those funds. It is a question that was asked by Chief Investigator Lauren Traeger today. For over a week, she has been telling you about issues involving a St. Louis City building inspector and whether he was pocketing those public funds. Lauren joins us now with the latest.
The city of St. Louis now says 2 building inspectors are under investigation, though for unrelated issues. One we've been telling you about extensively. He oversaw a program using federal pandemic funds to fix up vacant properties in the city. Now, Senator Eric Schmidt says that should rightly be investigated.
This isn't chump change, Lauren. This is about $70 billion of taxpayer money. And it's the people's money.
Senator Eric Schmidt now has sent letters to Missouri associations of counties and municipalities warning them against the continued use of federal pandemic funds beyond this calendar year, saying what First Alert 4 Investigates has uncovered may be far from the only case of concern.
It's really troubling to have somebody that's in charge of the program potentially be diverting contracts to his own company and misusing those funds. That's very concerning.
First Alert 4 Investigates told you about 3 companies with ties to St. Louis City Inspector Adebanjo Papula. First Alert 4 Investigates has obtained an accounting sheet from the city's comptroller showing just this year alone, Farst Construction, Maxify Contractors, and Premier Finish Contractors have been paid millions in public dollars for work they reportedly did to fix up private and public-owned buildings in the city. Those companies have been tied to Papula, and those programs were meant to stabilize vacant properties for health and public safety. But some city property owners told us they seriously question the work being done, and we've uncovered the dollar amounts paid by the city to these questionable companies may be much higher, as the connections could go back for years. Papula has declined to comment and has since resigned.
I also am concerned with this rush here at the end of the year to spend billions of dollars. This won't be the only case, the one you're investigating. There's going to be more because they're trying to shovel the stuff out the door as fast as they can, and there's not a lot of protocols and auditing being done to make sure that taxpayer dollars aren't being misused.
Mayor Tashara Jones has asked the FBI and state auditor to investigate the city's building division, saying the doors of City Hall will be open to them. But questions have also been raised about grant programs set to provide funds to small businesses and nonprofits on the city's north side using pandemic funds. Schmidt says various federal agencies should take deep dives into how the money was spent. And we asked, could there be a possibility that cities like St. Louis would have to pay back the money?
Yeah, potentially. It's really troubling. And I think that unfortunately we're going to see more of this, and there ought to be investigations, and some of those dollars definitely ought to be clawed back.
Again, a number of local and state leaders have asked for various investigations into the city's building division. A second city building inspector is on forced leave right now. The city's comptroller has said the stabilization programs using state and federal dollars appear to show signs of fraud and abuse. Certainly, it appears there will be a lot more to come to all of this, and we will keep following it. I'm Lauren Traeger. First Alert 4 Investigates. It was a giant warehouse fire that closed the Stan Musial Veterans Memorial Bridge for 2 days back in October. That fire, you may remember, caused significant damage to a historical warehouse. But First Alert 4 Investigates is now asking questions tonight after city officials hired a demolition company to take down the building, and it's still there 2 months later. Plus, they are sending the property owner a bill he says he did not ask for.
It was just very disheartening, very frustrating.
Adam Kuhn chokes up a bit looking at the shell of what was once a piece of history.
This was a project that I put a lot of passion and work into, and now we see the results of that.
He put hundreds of thousands into this building, hoping to return the 100-year-old ice house at 1800 North Broadway to glory. It served as a massive refrigerator for blocks of ice and produce, operating all the way up until this century.
About the last year, I've been battling homeless people coming in.
But Adam was on scene talking to First Alert 4 as a fire raged on October 14th. The smoke billowing over the stand span, shutting it down.
While the firefighters were battling the fire, yes, it was necessary to poke holes in the building. However, they never did that.
Instead, he says a company started ripping into the side that hadn't yet been touched by fire.
I learned that on the 6 o'clock news when I saw these big, huge machines tearing my building down that I'd worked so hard on.
2 months later, though, the machines are gone. Stacks of metal and piles of brick left. The shell of it still standing, but pieces hang from it, hardly seeming safe. When we were there last week, anyone could just walk up. The street was technically closed to traffic, but someone had dumped trash. By Monday, after our inquiries to the city about it, there's a new fence surrounding the site and the street's back open. The work is still stalled.
The city's definitely leaving me between a rock and a hard place right now with this mess, and nobody's been down here for a month, so now what the heck do I do?
Adam didn't get a say-so in who the contractor was. The city's building commission used an emergency provision of law to swiftly send a demolition contractor over. In fact, the city provided documents saying they had intended to tear the building down earlier in the year for code violations.
They say that they notified you on August 1st of 2024 of condemnation.
Never heard from them. And I'm the easiest guy in St. Louis to find. Google my name.
Back in August, the city received just one bid for the project, Z&L Wrecking. But a spokesperson said they, quote, were not going to move forward at that time due to budgetary restrictions. Fast forward to the fire in October. That same wrecking company got the call. And now, without consenting, Adam's on the hook for the $786,000 bill.
Is it fair for property owners to be billed for something they did not consent to?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We are still paying taxes. We're still paying for the water. We are still paying our property insurance. And the city wants to do things like this and play games with our livelihood.
Adam says he would have wanted to get his own bids, consult an engineer, or even try to salvage the materials. What's worse, he says, Arnice Little, the wife of the owner of Z&L Wrecking, is appointed by the mayor to sit on a demolition board for the city.
Is that a concern for you?
That's a huge concern. I think that what we found out just this week that's going on down at the city of St. Louis, particularly the building division, is just the tip of the iceberg of the collusion, the corruption that's going on down there.
In recent weeks, First Alert 4 Investigates has been telling you about companies tied to a now former St. Louis City building inspector named Banjo Papula. Our reporting revealing those companies making millions of dollars in city contracts. The mayor's office has now called for an FBI investigation and an audit. But in a text message just released to us through a public records request, the building commissioner says to another employee, I didn't know about the Banjo thing. And a similar lack of knowledge regarding the demolitions. In a statement from the city regarding a representative from Z&L Wrecking being on the city demolition board, a spokesperson wrote, quote, the commissioner was not aware of this. We are looking into how the division determines conflict of interest relative to this matter.
It's not a conflict of interest.
Arnice Little of Z&L Wrecking tells us the board she sits on helps vet other contractors, but she says it does not handle the contracts or financials.
I'm not privileged to that information. Again, I may sit on the board, but I'm not privileged to that information.
An official demolition permit from the city has not yet been issued for this site. As to why the work has not been completed, Little says they are waiting for utilities to be completely abandoned.
So we're at their whim. And then once we finally get the utilities and shown it's been abandoned, then, we're able to go clear.
Demolition, she says, should continue in the new year. Meanwhile, the city has placed a lien on the property for the full cost of the demolition.
The city definitely needs some major checks and balances.
Adam says, like other aspects of the building division in St. Louis, he wants the demolition process investigated.
The city has enough egg on its face right now to make an omelet, as far as I'm concerned. So something very drastic needs to be done across the board.
Now, Adam maintains he had not seen a single document from the city this year. When we requested them and showed them to him, he said the city had his wrong address. He seriously disputes the code violations that led to the demolition request over the summer. Meanwhile, we are now hearing directly from that now former St. Louis City building inspector Adebanjo Papula. He's been tied to 3 companies earning millions in city contracts, including one company that was registered to his ex-wife's address and 2 others connected to a woman with whom he now owns a home. Well, we have now obtained Papula's resignation letter from December 13th, in which he wrote, quote, "I truly did not have any favoritism for any of the contractors, but unfortunately, I developed a personal relationship with one of the contractors in the past year. Therefore, to avoid any further negative publicity, I am resigning my position." He also said his resignation was due to the allegations and insinuations by the media. Today, the mayor's spokesperson says they acted swiftly to open internal and outside investigation.
We can do is find out how this is happening and how we can prevent it. So again, those internal investigations along with those external investigations are going to help inform the next steps that we take to ensure that that type of behavior is not tolerated in the city and that we can restore the public's trust.
And we will, of course, continue to follow those investigations.